Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Boyce. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Board Secretary. This is a reorganization meeting for the Freehold Regional High School District, January 9th, 2017. Thank you, Charlie. The first item on the agenda, the first order of business, is the official election results, which are included in the agenda from the November 8th, 2016 election. I'll read them to you. The Englishtown representative, Elizabeth Canario, 10,855 votes. Total write-in candidate, 65. Farmingdale Borough representative, Kathy Lavin, 13,561 votes. Total write-ins, 41. Howell Township representative, Amy Fankhauser, 13,581 votes. Total write-ins, 76. So congratulations to our three new and returning board members for their victory at the polls. The next item of business is to administer the oath of office. So if Mrs. Canario, Mrs. Lavin, and Ms. Fankhauser could join me up front in the table right here, please.
So.
Yeah, I got you. Just a motion.
Yeah, okay. So roll call. Mr. Acetola.
Present.
Mr. Bruno.
Present.
Mrs. Canario.
Present.
Mr. Carollo.
Present.
Ms. Fankhauser.
Here.
Mrs. Lavin.
Yes.
Mr. Messinger.
Here.
Mrs. Sutera.
Present.
Mr. Moses.
Here.
Thank you. May I have a motion? We're going to do things slightly different than listed on the agenda. After our Mr. Toscano, the board's attorney, makes some comments regarding ethics training, we're going to move into the nominations section of the agenda. So if I could have a...
Just one second. I'll finish the ethics part and then we'll go there.
And then we'll do that? That's fine. Okay.
Just to
I'll
kind
give
of
it to you
close
then.
it out. I know this is the time that all of you anxiously look forward to, where I provide you with the PowerPoint presentation and walk through the School Ethics Act and the recent decisions of the School Ethics Commission. Being as the membership of the Freehold Regional High School District has remained steadfastly the same for really the last 3 years, rather than go through the presentation again, I have left on each one of your daises the updated PowerPoint presentations, which really the most recent decisions would not really affect the Freehold Regional High School District, as we are not really affected by the vast majority of them. Everything is really maintaining status quo for you guys. So if there are, of course, individual questions, I am more than happy to entertain them or to have a discussion with you in a one-to-one context. Under the Ethics Act, the board is required to acknowledge and receive and to have a discussion of the act itself, so this can constitute that discussion. Yes?
The cases that are in here, are these only most recent cases, or are these pre-existing and since the last presentation?
So there are some new decisions that have been released recently, but the vast majority, because I try to provide cases that give you examples for each tenant. Unfortunately, some tenants haven't had a case decided in a good 10 years. So, there are a good amount of them that are the same. The ones where you see new decisions being entered are the ones dealing with micromanaging, not administering the schools, and no personal promises. Other than that, the definitions are the same. You remember last time there was the big change from the School Ethics Commission as to what constituted an other. We finally got a definition as to what an other was. That has not changed. That has in fact been solidified. Really, the two biggest changes during the 2016 calendar year were in the area of personnel committee. The School Ethics Commission had rendered an advisory opinion that if a board chooses to have a personnel committee, the role of a personnel committee is to be very limited. They do not want board members sitting in on interviews for any position, obviously other than the one position that the board truly hires, which is superintendent. And then the other area where there has been some clarifications is in the area of shared services. There were decisions in 2015 issued that if a board member served on a district that had a shared relationship with another district, and that board member was also employed in the other district, they could not maintain that board membership and the employment because of the shared services arrangement. That has been walked back. They actually issued a decision in August stepping back from that. So those really were the two biggest areas of change in the 2016 school year, calendar year, excuse me.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Toscano on the ethics piece? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to nominate a, I'm sorry, that's correct. I need a motion and a second to change the order of agenda as previously described. Mr. Moses?
Second.
Mr. Bruno?
And just for clarification purposes, this would be to change the order of the agenda just to move the election of president and vice president, which is numbers 3 and 4, prior to executive session.
Motion, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. So here's how this will work. I will ask for nominations. Any member can put forth any other members or any member's name. Does not need a second. And when it becomes apparent that there are no further nominations to be made, we'll take the appropriate action from there. So allow me to open up the floor for nominations for President of the Board of Education at this time.
Mr. Boyce,
Yes.
it's my privilege to nominate Mr. Michael Messinger for the office of board president.
Thank you.
Just looking on the ladder.
Thank you.
I like to nominate Jen.
Mr. Moses. I'd like to nominate Mrs. Sutera.
I'd like to make a nomination as well.
We don't need a second. That's okay, we only need one, no. Yeah, we're just, if there's any other names.
Any other names? We have Mr. Messinger and Ms. Sutera currently. Any other nominations? Okay, so I would like to, I'm going to need a motion and a second to close nominations. Mr. Moses, thank you. Second, Liz. Ms. Canario. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so nominations are closed. We need to take a roll call vote. There are two candidates for the position of President of the Board of Education. I will take a roll call vote. Just one moment.
On the order of the candidates in which they were nominated. So it's the, because Mr. Messinger was nominated first, we'll conduct the vote for Mr. Messinger. Really, it's the first candidate that receives the weighted majority of those present and voting. We have all 9 here tonight. So we'll conduct the roll call vote. You may have to excuse Mr. Boyce and I will do the math.
Thank you.
The first person, Mr. Messinger, because he was nominated first, does not have the weighted majority. Then we will move on to Ms. Sutera's.
So for clarification, so on the motion of Mr. Messinger as the President for the Board of Education, as I call roll, it's yes or no?
And it's
Okay,
just on Mr.
everybody
Messinger.
clear? And then, if that's successful with the weighted majority, then we're done, and if not, then we'll move on to Ms. Sutera. Everybody clear? Okay, so it will be yes or no. So the question is on the candidacy of Michael Messinger as the Board President for Freehold Regional Board of Education. Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
No.
Ms. Canario?
No.
Mr. Carollo?
No.
Mrs. Fankhauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutera?
No.
Mr. Moses?
Give me a second.
Thank you. So Mr. Toscano and I have confirmed our math is the same. That motion has failed. 3.8 votes for yes, 5.2 for no. So we'll move on to the next motion, which is for Ms. Sutera for the position of President of the Board of the Freehold Regional High School District. Same thing, I'll move through. It will be yes or no answer. Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
No.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Carollo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fankhauser?
No.
Mrs. Lavin?
You can vote. Yes, you can vote either way, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Messinger?
No.
Mrs. Sutera?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a 1.0, 2.0, 3, 4. Okay, motion passes.
Okay, so that motion was successful with 5.6 yes and 3.4 no. Therefore, Mrs. Sutera, congratulations. If you'd like to take your position here in the president's seat. Okay, so if you could just give us one moment.
I'd like to open the floor for nominations for vice president. Any nominations? I'd like to nominate, can I
You
nominate?
can nominate.
Pete Bruno. Any other nominations?
Mr. Bruno, are you willing to accept the nomination? You would.
Thank you.
So, yes, use your roll call, please.
Hold on a second, get the motion together. Okay, so, the motion, the language for that, since there is only one board member nominated, it is, here's the motion, I'll need a first, a second, and then we'll vote on that. That the nominations be closed and that the board secretary be instructed to cast a unanimous vote to elect Mr. Peter Bruno as the Vice President of the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education. I'll need a motion and a second.
Motion. A motion second?
Okay, ask if there's any comments.
Any comments?
Tell me to do the roll.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Carollo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fankhauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Cetera?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations.
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 Motion to go into closed session?
Motion.
Amy?
Amy, second.
Second?
Kathy?
Kathy.
All those in favor?
All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
We will return at 7 o'clock.
We'll be back, yeah. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this meeting has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press, issue of June 16, 2016, and December 21, 2016. All municipal clerks of the townships and their boroughs within the Regional High School District have been duly notified, and the requirements of posting of notice have been met.
Madam President, just for clarification purposes, the board, in addition to the items discussed on the agenda, also discussed for exception number 3, 2 additional items. The first was an update on student discipline matters, and the second one was a transportation appeal matter. The board also discussed exception number 7, update on pending tenure matter.
Yeah, we need a motion for reorg items 5 through.
Okay, I need a motion for reorg items numbers 5 to 10.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? No, roll call.
First ask if
Any discussion?
Any questions?
discussion.
Discussions? Roll call.
Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Carollo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fankhauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes,
Mrs. Cetera?
Yes. Approval of the meeting's minutes from, any questions? Discussion, motion?
Mr. Moses?
Trustee?
Second.
Second? Now discussion. Roll call?
Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Carollo?
Yes.
Mrs.
Abstain?
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Satara?
Yes. Communications are on file in the Office of the Board Secretary. Reports, Superintendent report?
All right, good evening, everyone. A few items, just very brief. First off, congratulations, Mrs. Satara. Congratulations, Mr. Bruno. Welcome aboard. And congratulations for the re-swearing in of three board members. It's terrific to have consistency in the board. Couple things that are happening as we come back from the holiday break this past week or so. Our 8th grade orientations are in full swing across the district. Gives parents a wonderful opportunity to really get a taste of what's happening in the high schools, and I think our high schools really do a wonderful job of personalizing the experience within each building, giving students not just an overview of sort of here's your administration, here's what the building looks like, but really some more in-depth looks at some of the programs and offerings that we have across the district. So those are in full swing. They'll occur in the 6 high schools for the better part of the month at different times. I was at Townships last week, and they always do a terrific job. We also, Mr. Boyce and I, participated in our mid-year budget review this past week with the County Superintendent of Schools. What the mid-year budget review does is, as a district, we really need to answer a number of questions related to, A, how we're positioning ourselves for a longer-term view of the district financially, but B, really about what we're doing with our instructional program, with some of our dollars and the initiatives and so on that we have going on in the district. And I'm pleased to report that the county superintendent referred to our submission as a dissertation. Because we take it very seriously and take our time in answering all of those questions very, very thoroughly in conjunction with aligning what we're doing with year 5 of our strategic plan. This Saturday, we have a really unique event taking place across the district. It's at Manalapan High School, but over 200 Freehold Regional High School District students are going to participate in it. And what it is a 24-hour hackathon at Manalapan High School. And what a hackathon is, not hacking into emails or any sort of WikiLeaks types of things, but what it is students come together and they develop code over a 24-hour period. And they have 24 hours to create code, to design code to solve a problem that they generate on site. And we partnered with the Rutgers Hackathon team, who will be there on site with us, as well as a professional entity that does quote unquote hackathons. The Manalapan administration and Dr. Angelosi and his team have run point on this. It's been a terrific partnership with a number of corporate entities across the county to sponsor the event. So basically, most of the costs are going to be covered by external donations, even having some corporate partners donate things like T-shirts. We have virtual reality glasses that each participant will receive that was all donated from different corporate partners. So I think that with the movement toward coding and the importance of coding in how that develops some logical processes within our students, it's a wonderful opportunity to do something really different and out of the box. And it's been months in the culmination of this event, and we've done things before, like lock-ins where students, peer leaders might be doing certain things, but we've never taken on anything this big for this long of a period within one of our buildings. So I think all told, we have 50 some odd chaperones that are participating in this to make sure that it goes smoothly. We've got a number of, our principals will be in and out, and so it's going to be, I think it's going to be an awesome day, and I think it's a nod to the future of some of the real sort of out of the box problem solving that students will be afforded an opportunity to engage in. So I'm really excited for that, and hats off to the Manalapan team for taking the initiative with bringing it to fruition, and that's this Saturday at Manalapan High School. We also have, we just finalized some significant training for about 60 some odd of our faculty and staff members over the course of the next couple months related to Google, whether it's becoming a Google certified educator, whether it's learning about if I'm, Google, how it can assist in specific classes, whether it's special education, mathematics. We partnered with a gentleman by the name of Rich Kuiper, well-known entity with helping school districts bring to scale the utilization of some of these tools to help us move into a space that allows students to create and collaborate outside of the traditional schoolhouse walls. So we're really excited for what that training will hold for us. And I think that, it's in line with where we are with our strategic plan, and we feel real comfortable with the different folks we're going to have at the table. And we continue to move forward with our planning for the movement to a block schedule here in the district. That committee has been broken into several subcommittees to take care of things from duty periods, scheduling, how we might leverage the lunch time as well, and we're moving forward. And remember, when we put those plans in place, we gave ourselves a couple years to really iron the kinks out, rather than as a school district decide on a Friday that we're going to go to a block schedule and then move there on a Monday. When you're changing that traditional paradigm of 45-minute classes and moving that to a rotating schedule where your classes might be between 65 and 70 minutes and might not meet every day, we really believe strongly that we wanted to do a lot of front work with our faculty and staff prior to implementation. So that work proceeds on time. We will move into that new schedule in September of 2018, and we feel real confident with the work that's been done on that front. And my final act in my report is tonight we had a changing of the guard. So Mrs. Sotero was sworn in as the Freehold Regional High School District Board President. Mr. Moses, Mr. Harold Heshe Moses, has been the Board President for 6 years at this point in time. And it's a pleasure for me to say, as Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Moses has been the Board President for as long as I've been here as Superintendent. In fact, in my previous superintendency, when I was a finalist for a candidate in this district, it was Mr. Moses who came to my district at that time in his Freehold jacket, I might add, which was a little awkward in the hallways. And one of the things that he did, which I think tells you a lot about his character, is you set up a site visit for him, and you think that he's going to go want to talk to the principal and whomever else, but he talked to those folks. But the first places he went were to talk to the custodial staff, to talk to the secretaries, to talk to folks in and around the building about how they were treated and how they felt, and what was was there relational trust in the organization. And then when I was fortunate enough to be offered the position here, Mr. Moses has been the Board President with me ever since. And folks should understand, with Superintendent of Schools and Board President, you end up spending a lot of time together. You end up on the phone together, you end up in meetings, you have your agenda meeting ahead of the agenda. Every time there's a major issue, there's a conversation just from an alert, but you spend an awful lot of time together over the years. And Mr. Moses worked in the district for almost 35 years, so he's intimately familiar with the district, but he has been a real advocate for just treating people with dignity, making sure that this is a great place to work, making sure that students have what they need in our schools to succeed, and putting his own ego aside. And I think Mr. Moses doesn't come in with his mind made up about something. He's always been open to just hearing the whole story, and then making a decision. And as a superintendent, the consistency behind that allows the district to thrive. When you have when folks, as board president, Mr. Moses will tell you, he understands fully. He just wants to make sure that the district's well run and that kids have what they need and that folks are treated well in the district. And it's been a real honor and a real pleasure for me to work with him over the past 6 years. And I feel badly sometimes. I know his wife Vicky has had enough of a lot of the late nights and the meetings. But I think that a lot of the things that folks on the board do often go unnoticed, and there's an awful lot of time put in on committees and work. And to be board president for 6 years is a real long run with an awful lot of responsibility and an awful lot of time given to the district. So I have to credit Mr. Boyce for this one. Mr. Moses, if you don't know, if you look at the back of the car out there, I don't know if he still has it, he has a Grateful Dead symbol on his Jeep. Mr. Moses is a huge Grateful Dead fan, and so we have an inscription that says, this is presented to Heshi Moses, Board President 2011 to 2016, in grateful appreciation for your outstanding leadership and dedicated service to the Freehold regional community. So, Mr. Moses, I just want to present this to you.
Mr. Sampson, if I may, I would just like to thank you and the board, and particularly Mr. Boyce, for spelling grateful correctly. Only a true secret deadhead would know the spelling. Thank you, Mr. Boyce.
Very nice. And thank you, Heshi, for all your service. It's been an honor. I hope I can fill your shoes. It's been an honor working with you. Your dedication exceeds all expectations. I know we started together, and I just wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I thought
No board reports.
Mr. Sotero, before we proceed to public comment, just to point out some addendum to the agenda, three of which, there are four, but three of which are on a yellow sheet of paper in the back of the room. The fourth is G12, and I'll read it into the record. Approval of separation agreement. Be it resolved that upon recommendation of the superintendent, the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education hereby rescinds Resolution G17 from the December 19th, 2016 board meeting and approves the separation agreement for employee number 10793, effective December 23, 2016, and that's G12. So with those changes, that's the agenda for public comment.
Okay. Public comment, Mr. Bass?
Good evening. First, if I may, I would just like to pass this out to, and I only made 10 copies, so if everybody can just maybe share. And I'll just wait 1 minute if you don't mind, so everybody sees what I'm speaking about to make it a little more. While everybody's getting that, I'd like to start by saying thank you to the board of ed as a whole. As someone who served on many boards in my professional career, I know that the work you do is thankless. And, sometimes receiving a plaque, is not enough. So from somebody who's been living in the district 13 years, my kids went to Mount Englishtown Regional District first, and now are part of Freehold Regional High School District. I just want to say thank you. The reason that I appeared here this evening is I had over the past about 4 to 5 weeks, and I can't recall the first date that I did, I contacted the Transportation Department to speak with them 6:30 and 6:40 in the morning, where I know many other students even get picked up earlier than that. She's 15 years old, she's a female, and it's dark. So the reason for me beginning my discussion with the Transportation Department was out of pure safety for my daughter. The bus stop on my particular street cannot be seen from my home. So if you look at what I've passed out, the bus currently comes up Huggins Lane, which is where the arrow is, and stops at number 1, which is where my daughter's current bus stop is. My house is located at number 4, around the curve, again, that cannot be seen from my home. Not on a straight run, it's at an area where I cannot see her. When the bus picks her up, it then makes a left-hand turn onto Bloomfield Road, proceeds down to number 2 on the corner of Bloomfield and Moncton, makes a right-hand turn, and proceeds to number 3, which is the last bus stop on the run. When I first thought about it, and I spoke to some people about it, a lot of my neighbors, a lot of friends who live throughout Freehold Regional High School District have said, why don't you speak to the bus driver? And I said, that's not the right way to do things. The right way to do things is to contact the Transportation Department and lay out the reason for something I want done. So I first contacted the Transportation Department and had an email exchange with Ms. Figueroa about having the bus, instead of turning left onto Bloomfield Road, turn right onto Bloomfield Road, be able to come around, pick my daughter up, yes, in front of the home or somewhere nearby, and then continue down to the last stop. The time, the distance, and the safety of every person involved would not be impacted. Not only would the safety not be impacted, the current route actually at where number 2 is located is the stop for Manalapan High School, where a lot of kids and cars congregate at the exact same time. So this van actually has to turn in front of a lot of students that are there. So by altering the bus route from its current run, making the left onto Bloomfield Road and making the right turn onto Bloomfield Road, not only would ensure the safety of my daughter, would then also not endanger any children or parents at the Manalapan High School bus stop, and allow the route to be very safe and effective, not increase the time, and allow everybody to go home. When I first approached Ms. Figueroa, she had denied my request. I then asked to communicate with Ms. Stanley, who was the transportation supervisor, and she also denied my request. I then had the opportunity to have a face-to-face meeting with Mr. Boyce, who, let me say, treated me with the utmost respect. We had a very polite conversation about this. And in the end, when I saw Mr. Boyce was not willing to alter the bus route, I said, can we come to some sort of compromise? Can we meet in the middle of the road? Because one of the things that Mr. Boyce said to me, and there were many things that we discussed, was, quote unquote, if I do it for you, it will get around and other parents will call and say, we did it for Mr. Bass's daughter, I want you to do it for my child. So I said to Mr. Boyce, let's have a compromise. Can we switch the bus stop? And if you get even one request or one complaint from another parent about the accommodation that you made, we will return the bus stop to to its original place. I thought it was a fair compromise, which Mr. Boyce still denied. And I completely respect him and his opinion on it. Unfortunately, being the stubborn person that I am, I reached out to Mr. Sampson. And Mr. Sampson and I also had a fantastic conversation about this. Understood my request and also denied it. Also had the occasion today, after sending him an email, to also speak with Dr. Hazel, also about the same matter. Not expecting that phone call, which I thank, and I don't know Dr. Hazel, but I'd like to say thank you to her as well. Thank you. There's no nameplate in front of me.
Oh, sorry about that. Everybody switched seats today.
There we go.
Yep.
Also, was very receptive to our discussion and said something very interesting to me in the end. While this was, she felt, late in the year already to make any change, and my response to that was, well, I've been discussing this for a month, so it's already been going on. Well, one thing that she did say to me was, well, what about making sure you put in a formal request for next school year? So I said, okay, so that's going to definitely be something that I do. So the ultimate reason for me to be here is to not chastise or speak ill of anybody on the board. Because again, the job you do is thankless. It's really just to express my disappointment. My disappointment in that I tried to come to a compromise. A compromise that would just ensure my child's safety, not for any other reason whatsoever. And while I don't think, and in my discussion with Mr. Boyce, Mr. Sampson, that the board has any say in this, and that is really ultimately up to Mr. Boyce. I really just wanted, as a member of this community, parent of students, my son graduated from Fairfield High School, from the Tom Sy Academy, is actually coming back this Saturday from college to be a chaperone for the hat-free.
Awesome.
He spoke with Mr. Kulo about that. Again, I really just wanted to express my disappointment that we couldn't, that I feel we couldn't have a middle ground. We couldn't come to some sort of middle ground. And also, please forgive my appearance this evening. I came straight from my office. I'd like to entertain any questions that anybody would have, or be happy to hear any comments anybody would like to make on the matter. So, and I'd like to, state, for the minutes that I'm formally requesting that the group that is put together for next school year be made in such a way to not have to be changed in the middle of the year and be in a place that would ensure the safety of my child. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for the work you do for our community.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any, like to speak? Okay. I'd like to take a motion to take, G1 to K2 in one. I need a motion.
Motion?
Second.
Questions? Discussion?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Just to be clear, this is on the approval of items G1 through K2. Mr. Asatola?
Yes.
Ms. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Corolla?
Yes.
Ms. Fankhauser?
Yes.
Ms. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Terra?
Yes. Old business? Anyone? New business?
Yes, I have a question. Is this on?
Yep.
Mr. Sampson, I have a question. In Marlboro, throughout the years, there's been a lot of people that refuse to park. So now that the incoming freshmen basically have to sit for park, it's a whole different ballgame than the middle school where everyone in the class took the test at the same time. So how do you address the concerns of a parent whereby she's worried that her child will go off and take the park test while the rest of the algebra class or whatever the child's taking remains in the class?
Yeah, that's, so I would start by answering that by saying that we share some concerns with the length of testing to begin with. And when we looked at how we were going to develop our building-based schedules to accommodate the requirements of the park test, we had two choices to make. We could go to a half-day session and just do testing and move through that, or we can integrate the testing schedule into our overall day. We felt that in some of our high schools, and each building-based schedule is highly specific to the room utilization, computer lab space, Chromebook usage, and I should posit that we had initially utilized desktop computers for the testing. We've requested from the state 100 times data on whether or not there's any difference in student performance if they take the assessment on a desktop or a portable device, or even more specific, Chromebooks versus Mac Pro Airs versus desktops. They have that data. I don't know if the state has it. The Park Consortium most certainly has it, and it has never been shared with school districts. So we develop each building schedule based with room utilization, computer space, and the such. And what ends up happening, rather than shut down all of our schoolwork for 5 to 6 to potentially 7 half days, we integrated the testing into our daily schedule. Now that is onerous from a planning perspective, but we feel healthier to maintain a connection to the ongoing learning, teaching and learning in the school for all students, not just those who are being tested. English, when you take the PARCC assessment, and I will say last year, the parental concerns should be lessened this year because last year we were designated a pilot district and had 2 hours more testing than we do this year, which in essence is another full day of testing, whether it's ELA or math. From a grade level perspective, the English language arts is much cleaner. 9th graders are in English 1, 10th graders are in English 2, and so on. So they're in the same course. So that's a clean. The 9th graders are going to be testing at the same time for the most part, the 10th graders and so on. Math is much more convoluted because let's say geometry. Geometry can have 9th, 10th, 11th, and not necessarily 12th grade, but certainly 9th, 10th, and 11th graders in that class. And when you utilize that schedule, there may be some other classes that, if I'm a 9th grade English class and it's an honors English class, and let's say that 12 of those kids are in geometry as well, so those 12 kids are testing for geometry rather than the Algebra 1 that would align cleanly with the 9th grade. When you look at the schedule overall, mathematically, it's done over a 2-day period. So a student that would be pulled out in that might miss potentially 2 courses. However, we work closely with our teachers during the testing period so that they understand as we move into that testing period, my classes may be disrupted. I may have some students out, and teachers know that ahead of time, who's going to be out and what it's going to look like. And so, they work with the students, and their assignments over that couple-day period are traditionally more extended assignments so that students don't fall behind. They're not introducing new material necessarily while 7 of their students might be testing. And it went very, very smoothly last year. We worked through that last year. Did not have any issues with any students feeling that they were somehow missed too much class or were not able to understand what was happening. So it was fairly clean. We expect it to be fairly clean moving forward. It's the testing duration is less now. Math might be the only real issue, and Deb and Jeremy, you're out there, and from a building perspective, I think math is really the only where we'd have some concerns. But even that, a teacher knows if I'm teaching English 2 and I have 8 students in Algebra 2 and everybody else is in geometry, I know that those 8 students are going to be out on the Algebra 2 day, and the other 12 students are going to be out in the geometry day, and I work around that ahead of time. So everybody has the schedule well in advance, and it hasn't been an issue with missed class time. I will posit that park testing is too long, period. That's a personal belief, a superintendent belief, a parent belief, and it is way too long in terms of what is required.
I want to add one more thing. Jen, congratulations.
Thank you.
I have a request, and this is really for everybody. One of the things, probably, I guess this is good, one of the things that really bothers me is when we have the meetings at the high schools. You know how we always sit on the stage? Is there any way we could get feedback on whether we could sit down on the floor?
I
Because
agree.
it seems like there's no room up on the stage, and then we're kind of sitting there in the lights, and I don't know, I just think it would be more comfortable if we were on the floor.
I have to take the blame for that. So we moved off of the pit a few years ago because we couldn't see out when we were sitting there.
But also with the awards.
And so what happened was board members were upset with not being able, we couldn't see. So when parents were there, I think it was at Township that night, a number of folks complained that we were in the pit. So we moved it to the stage. It doesn't matter to me whatsoever. So, that's the whim of the board if you want to sit on the stage or sit in the pit. But I have to take the blame for moving us up. But that was a response to folks complaining about being in the pit.
But Mr. Sampson, also with the awards, sometimes it got very crowded down at the bottom.
Yeah, that was
of the award evening.
so there was an impetus because we were originally in the pit and then we moved.
Cheers.
Well, that was my.
Well, we can talk.
At the next meeting, we'll take a vote. People can think about it.
Okay.
I don't like sitting on the stage either, personally, so.
I think we're gonna fall off of these
All right, that's it.
Some of my schools.
Any more new business? I need a motion for an adjournment.
Motion.
Second. He wants this job.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Good job.
Thank you.